For a while there, for years now, actually, you'd wake up every day and check the news and say to yourself, what fresh hell is this? And now it's like, what legion of fresh hells is this? And it continues apace. But folks, it was a pleasure to be able to read something, a brilliant little flash of insight from who I think is the smartest man on the face of planet Earth. That's Thomas Sowell. I really think he's the smartest living person today in terms of wisdom and his ability to understand the fundamental dynamics of what's going on. So I want to read a quote for you from Thomas Sowell. And I want to explain to you why this is something you need to keep in mind, especially as the next years start to unfold. Here's what Thomas Sowell wrote back in 2004, because this is a timeless piece of wisdom. This is the Sowell quote, "There's something Eric Hoffer said, intellectuals cannot operate at room temperature." Unquote for Hoffer. There's always has to be a crisis, some terrible reason why their superior wisdom and virtue must be imposed on the unthinking masses. Doesn't matter what the crisis is. 100 years ago, it was eugenics. At the time of the first Earth Day, a generation ago, the big scare was global cooling, a big ice age. They go from one to the other. It meets their psychological needs and gives them a reason for exercising their power. Now, if you've wondered why the whole COVID-19 thing seems to be so crazy erratic and no two opinions mean the same, Fauci says one thing one week, says something the other week, we hear advice from this guy, advice from that guy, why all of this is so nonsensical, you have to understand that this is not a rational basis, that these elitists are not functioning from a rational place. They're not rational people. This is a psychological weakness that intellectuals have, and that's why they're intellectuals. Steve, the thing that has become clear to me, especially since the 2020 election, is this. This is not about conservatives and liberals, because I have seen some insanely dumb things done by conservatives. I've seen Republicans sell out in a heartbeat. Yeah. So I'm past those definitions now. But I think it's clear to everybody, and I think this is something that somebody like me could agree with most of the Bernie bros on, and that is that this thing is about the elites versus the people. And this is not just going on in America. This is worldwide. This is a worldwide revolution against the entire idea of self-governance on the part of a group of international elites that are fabulously wealthy and fabulously, incredibly enthralled to this idea that there must always be a crisis, because without a crisis, the regular people will just go on about their lives and be happy and have families and make money and enjoy themselves. And there won't be anything for me to do to show them just how smart I am and how far ahead of the curve I am. And who wants to live in a miserable world like that, they say.
Wow, a lot to chew on here. Let me give you some numbers I just did while you were doing your intro here, because something you said really made me think of something that has to do with this COVID so-called relief bill that just sailed through Congress, greased on basically $700 billion worth of pork grease. If you take your $600 check, and you figure that's supposed to cover like the last 6 months since the last relief bill money ran out. So that's 26 weeks at 40 hours a week. So that's 1,040 hours divided into your $600 relief check. They're paying you 57.7 cents per hour.
I thought $15 an hour was the minimum that decent people would be willing to pay.
57 cents an hour, 58 cents an hour, whatever you want to call it. This is what we also know as prison wages. And isn't that revealing? If you're in prison putting together furniture for a government office or carving wood or whatever it is the prison has you doing in order to try and instill in you some skills and work ethic to be rehabilitated into society, you're paid a pittance, 25 cents an hour, 50 cents an hour. Maybe it's $1 in some states. I don't know. Whatever it is, it's very tiny. That is what your betters on Capitol Hill think you are worth. Prison wages. And that's just it. They'll shut everything down. Just shut everything down. Look at California. Look at New York. These are one-party states, explicitly one-party states run by Democrats. You get to Texas, it's a little bit better. It's run by Republicans. You get to Florida, it's a lot better. It's also run by Republicans. But our betters in what many call the Uniparty in Washington think that your worth an inmate. And that's so telling because they built this jail for us since the pandemic began. Dear God, and we're getting off easy here. I don't mean to belittle anybody who's lost somebody to this very, very nasty respiratory infection, because it is a very nasty respiratory infection. But we're not talking about the Spanish influenza of 1918 here. We're talking about a respiratory bug that almost exclusively kills people who are already old or already dying of an average of 2.6 other comorbidities already. And in exchange for non-protection, nobody's protected from this thing. Look at the infection rates. Lockdowns don't work. In exchange for not protection, Washington is willing to pay you 57 cents an hour for the hell that they've put you through since March of this year.
And rest assured, Americans, they're willing to continue to pay you that rate for as long as they choose to into the indefinite, endless future. Scott, there's something about this this worldwide thing. Well, let's talk about the thing here in America and the pandemic. Steve's exactly right. Here's $600 for you. You lost your business. You may have had family members commit suicide. You've got your son, who was a high school starter, is not going to be able to play for the high school team, so he's probably not going to get a shot at the pros, and all the rest of the things that they inflict upon you. But I do notice that Saturday Night Live crew is still employed. I notice that the people in Congress continue to get their checks. I notice that the medical experts and the science researchers, they're all continuing to get paid. I recognize that the left-wing pundits who tell us that all of this is just absolutely normal and essential, and you really have to stay home, like Fredo, for example, who goes through the pantomime of living in his mansion and can't even stay inside there. He's doing it for our own good. It really is a fault line between the people who say that this pandemic and so on. I don't want to make it about the pandemic. I want to make it about the fact that these elitists cannot operate at room temperature, that they have to have a crisis, and without the crisis, they don't get to influence people by exercising their power over your life.
I want to contradict something you said at the beginning. I don't think the problem is intellectuals. Thomas Sowell's an intellectual. There are a lot of intellectuals out there whose ideas I would embrace. The problem is not intellectuals. It's intellectuals whose ideas require political muscle to get them accomplished. There are a lot of people who look at the world the way it is. Like a true economist would really be studying the way networks of capital work and how people make decisions and interactions and how corporations can influence buying decisions and all of that kind of stuff. There's a difference, though, between description and prescription. The intellectuals who engage in description, of trying to figure things out, to observe the world as it is and try to understand how it works, are different than the intellectuals who say, hey, now that we understand how that works, what if we tweak this knob over here and pull this lever down a little bit and pump that one up a little bit? Maybe we could get a different outcome. It's those people, and nothing, as we've cited before, nothing is more common than economists surprised by something, because those who are fiddling with the knobs fundamentally don't really understand how it works. Guys who understand how it works, guys like Thomas Sowell, are fundamentally not interested in fiddling with the knobs. They don't want to be in a position of manipulating that. They are evaluating how it works and trying to help us understand how that happens. So I don't have any beef with people who pursue the life of the mind, as they used to call it. I just want them to mind their own business.
One of my favorite jokes from the Soviet Union, so many of the Russian people have dealt with unbelievable tragedy through the dark kind of humor that the Soviets and the Russians are so fond of. One of my favorite of the entire Cold War period goes like this. An old babushka who'd been there during the Great Patriotic War and done her duty in World War II goes to talk to Comrade Brezhnev. She wants to see Comrade Brezhnev. She has a very serious question she wants to ask him. It's 1972. She goes to the Kremlin. She stands in line. She waits there. She waits there all day. Nobody comes out. She comes back the next day, waits all day, and so on. Finally, she says to the receptionist, I am not leaving this room until Comrade Brezhnev answers one question for me. And so the word is passed in there, and it's 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. Finally, at 1 a.m, Brezhnev comes out, sees her standing there, and he says, oh, comrade, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I understand you have a question for me. And she says, yes, Comrade Brezhnev, one question for you. Was communism designed by scientists or by politicians? And Brezhnev says, well, by politicians, of course. And the woman says, I knew it. If it had been scientists, they would have tested it on rats first. And that is exactly precisely where we are now with these people. They are moving levers, and they are changing lives, and they're putting people out of business, and they're doing all of this as an experiment on rats to see if their theories of human behavior work, number one, and number two, to make sure that they remain above the laws that they expect other people to obey. They are a blight on society, and they are more and more and more prevalent every single day. Half smart people who think that they know better how to run your life than you do. And that is the enemy that we are facing. And we better recognize it. They come in all different flavors, all different shades, all different colors, and all different political parties. If there is somebody who thinks that they are smarter than you and knows how to run your life better than you do, that is the person that we are at war with now. And that is the person who has stolen your government. And if you want a government back determined by the people who are actually forced to live under it, we better recognize real quick that what Thomas Sowell said is exactly correct. He's the smartest man that is alive on the earth today. These people cannot operate at room temperature. That means that unless there is a crisis, they will manufacture one. And if they have to manufacture one or five or whatever, they will use our natural ability to worry and to be in conflict that's built into the human system and use it against us, and they have to be brought to heel. And they're not going to go willingly. So if you want to take a look at a previous episode of Right Angle, figure out what you can do with your $600 check, you can go to Home Depot and buy yourself the materials necessary for a large-scale guillotine, because we're going to need a lot of those if these people don't start minding their own business and stop telling everybody else not only how to live, but what to live. And here's how much money we think that the inconvenience that we put you through is worth. 57 cents an hour, 40 hours a day. They'll pay that till the sun goes out. We'll see you next week on Right Angle. I'm Bill Whittle here for Steve Green and Scott Ott. This show is made possible by the members and the people who've been making one-time donations at BillWhittle.com. So if you're one of those folks that enjoy the show, we'd love to see you over there. We'll see you next week.